The film opens with two best friends, hard-headed Katie and promiscuous Sloane, looking forward to an upcoming out-of-town trip. They work at a farm called Ecofield Organic Farms for a month to save money for shopping in New York. The next morning, they were picked up by Katie's police uncle Jason to spend the night with Jason and his girlfriend before heading to the farm. Once they settle into their new location, Sloane suggests they come up with a fake name while in the city. Sloane coined the name Heather and Katie coined the name Ripley. The next day, Uncle Jason drops them off at the train station, from where they take a bus to the farm. Since Jason is the protection cop's uncle, he tells them to think of safe words in case they get into trouble. There is a convention that a code word must be sent at the end of each text. That is, Jason asks Katie to send a different code word in alphabetical order each day. Today's safe word is apple. Even after their uncle has left, the two of them decide to wait at a cafe for the bus that will arrive in about an hour. You quickly attract the interest of her two townspeople and end up sharing a table with them. The two women then introduce themselves using the pseudonyms they made up last night, and the two men introduce themselves as brothers named Jed and Lucas. The brothers offer to drive Katie to work, and Katie, initially reluctant, gives in to Sloane's silent demands. The two end up getting into the young people's blue truck. But things don't go according to plan. Jed deliberately passes in front of the farm where Katie and Sloane work, confusing the two women. And finally they get there. The two women are welcomed by Jed and Lucas' shady mother, who invites them for tea before heading to the farm. Once inside, Katie receives a text message from her cop uncle, telling her uncle that she's okay using agreed-upon safe words. In the meantime, the two eat cake and drink tea. They probably shouldn't, but they still eat. Her vision blurs when her drink is revealed to contain drugs. The two notice something strange and immediately escape for their lives. To her chagrin, Jed and Lucas manage to stun her and bring her back to her indoors. The next day, Katie and Sloane panic and find themselves chained in the middle of the woods. Jed approaches them and tells them that they will live here and will be provided with basic subsistence facilities such as clothes, beds, and toilets. Proceed to the next scene. As Katie and Sloane are getting dressed, Jed's boss Boris shows up and takes Katie's cell phone to see if anyone knows her whereabouts. It was at this point that I realized Katie and Sloane had lied about their names and the code word they used in their text messages. Katie and Sloane finally have to tell him that the word apple is a safe word. Everything is back to normal, and as Katie and Sloane take a makeshift shower and prepare to bathe, the town sheriff shows up with a gun. After all, the sheriff is a trafficking idiot who came to rape one of the women. After the evil sheriff is disgusted, Sloane visits an upset-looking Katie to calm her down. Across town, Uncle Jason is worried because her last text message, received from her girlfriend, Katie, contained the same safe words she used yesterday. Back in the woods, Jed and Lucas greet another guest. I will call this customer the dirty man from now on. He then selects Sloane and takes her to the trailer. Naturally, the scruffy guy is a little insane. Finally, back at the cop's uncle, he calls Sloane and Katie's work and finds out they didn't show up for work yesterday. I'm sure they are in trouble. He searches quickly. Meanwhile, Sloane and Katie's day is only made worse by the next client that turns up even darker than before. As the next customer approaches, Jed and Lucas scramble to cover their heads. A man in a pig mask captures Sloane and takes him to a trailer. Now that he's gone, it's Katie's job to calm down an upset Sloane. Her Sloane seems even more traumatized than before, and we don't know exactly what her pig-masked man did to her. In the next scene, Uncle Jason arrives at the sheriff's office and she is confronted by the perverted town sheriff she has seen before. It turns out that her uncle wasn't just a cop, he was actually an FBI agent. He voices his concerns and is convinced that his niece has been kidnapped. To make the plot even more interesting, the FBI uncle tells the sheriff that they are in trouble because for some reason Katie didn't use the new code word in the last text message she sent. "I made it back in the woods," the sheriff apparently told the kidnappers that Katie's uncle was an FBI agent and that Katie had lied about safe word. Not wanting the FBI to snoop on his human trafficking business, the boss orders Boris Jeff to kill them and dump the bodies. Katie overhears the conversation without them noticing. Meanwhile, the FBI's uncle decides to visit her shop for the coffee she sent Katie and Sloan to for the last time. He then asks the barista what he knows. The barista clearly remembers which truck Katie and Sloan left in. The next day, Katie tells Sloan that her kidnappers are planning to kill her just before they arrive with a dirty man. They then leave a scruffy man to keep an eye on them. Katie uses this opportunity to seduce him, and as soon as she gets close enough, she rips his throat out with her bared teeth. The two women are then released from their chains. Sheriffs arrived on the scene shortly thereafter, presumably to kill her. But just as he stepped out of the car, Katie and Sloan stole his car. The two women drive back to town and visit a hardware store to get ready. Now it's really going to explode. They then ask the cashier if he knows Boris, the man in the blue truck, and the cashier knows where he lives. Across town, Uncle Jason continues his investigation today by visiting the town's auto insurance building. He made up a story about an accident with a blue truck and asked the owner of the truck. Boris has just returned home. It turns out that Katie and Sloan sneaked up on him and threw a pile of nail-encrusted tennis balls at him, severely injuring him. After the tide turned, Boris begged for his life, even offering money in exchange for his life. At that moment, Uncle Jason stopped in front of Boris' house. Back at the house, Katie and Sloan question the identity of the man in the pig mask. When Boris refuses to reveal it, Katie and Thrawn pick up the spear they made and thrust it into Boris's buttocks, eventually killing him. When Uncle Jason finally enters the house, Katie and Sloan seem to have left, enjoying the sight of a dying Boris. At that time, Jason heard the roar of a car engine and a storm outside. Katie and Sloan drive off while Uncle Jason takes the dying Boris to the hospital. In the next scene, the sheriff informs Uncle Jason that Boris has not arrived in time. Uncle Jason gets worried and decides to call Katie's phone, but the sheriff pulls out his gun when he realizes the cover has been blown off. Katie and Sloan pull up in front of a church and discover that the man in the pig mask is actually the town priest. Sloan enters the church and confronts the rapist. With Katie's help, the two best friends manage to hunt down the bastard. As Katie and Sloan drive away, we find that they are taking it easy. However, when they pulled over and got out, it turned out that a man in a pig mask, aka Father, had been chained to the back of the truck the whole time. As a final blow, they doused him with gasoline, set him on fire, and drove off. The two women appear to be safe, but Uncle Jason is currently in sheriff's custody. To make matters worse, the sheriff appears to have captured two new young women. Luckily, Katie and Sloan were there to help. They tie up the sheriff and torture them with Russian roulette. I know the two women are a little confused, but in a way I don't think you can blame them. When Katie finally slaps the sheriff on the head, the sheriff begins to declare how sorry he is. Katie and Sloan then free the women and demand that Uncle Jason be released. Jason tries to question the women who killed the sheriff, but they refuse to answer, thanking Katie and Sloane for saving their lives. Katie and Sloane then visit Jed and Lucas' mother's house to decide to drug her the same way they drugged her a few days ago. They tied her up and took her to her basement where Jed was being tied up and gagged. With his mother watching, they hit the boy on the head with a baseball bat. They then take her to Lucas. Lucas is also strapped to her chair. But instead of beating him to death, they tied him up, gave him a bat, and threatened to beat his own mother. When Lucas expresses his displeasure, they shoot him. The two women then presented his body as if he had committed suicide. It turns out that they want to blame him for all the murders. A desperate mother offers to give her money in exchange for saving her life. But instead of saving her, Katie took her lawnmower into her hands and slaughtered her with it. In the next scene, Uncle Jason stops by Katie's house to pick her up and Sloane. It looks like it's been a while. Katie and Sloane are dropped off at the airport and excitedly headed to New York. End. Conclusion: in a thrilling sequence of events, Katie and Sloane endure a harrowing kidnapping, facing the darkest sides of humanity. However, their courage and resourcefulness ultimately prevail, bringing justice to their tormentors, and they finally find solace as they set off on their long-awaited adventure to New York, leaving behind a trail of bravery and resilience. Love to hear your comments.